Ozzy is one of the biggest producers of our generation and responsible for countless hits with artists like Travis Scott, Drake and many more. And I know there are already many videos about his production, but I want to focus on a specific type of Ozzy beats that I love the most, like these for example. I really love this kind of bounce and I never really hear it from any other big producers. So as always, I'm gonna break down something that I made in that style so you can see how you can get that sound yourself. You want to keep the melody very simple and leave lots of space for the artists and the drum bounce. For this beat I mainly used a piano layer that I got from one of my older samples from my Phantom sample pack. I just used some shaper box and a few other effects to make it a bit more interesting. And for a more atmospheric layer I used this chord one shot. I got it from another sample from the same sample pack. I also reversed it and pitched it up an octave to give that fade in, fade out kind of effect. And that's everything for the melody. Let's get to the bass line, which in my opinion is one of the most important elements to get this Ozzy kind of bounce. For the sound selection you want to go for something very subby and deep. I used this random bass one shot and I just used a bit of compression and distortion. And for the pattern you want to keep it very simple, but you want to keep a few things in mind. First of all, you probably noticed that we don't have any kind of chord progression in our melody. And that's perfect for our bass line because we can stay on one root note. You don't want your bass line to be melodic or move around a lot. It's gonna be more of a deep layer that just gives drive and energy to the beat. And for the rhythm it's important to make it a bit different from like the usual trap 808 pattern, which would probably look something like this. So for example this note is on the 2 end, and what really gives the Ozzy bounce is when you put it onto the 2 instead. So you have these two notes on the 1 and 2, which gives this very different, kind of ignorant in your face kind of bounce with the boom boom. Obviously you don't have to always do that, but just little details like this will give this more unique bounce and make it stand out more. And you also want to move some of the notes off the grid. You've probably heard it a lot for like drums and percussion elements, that it gives more bounce when you put some of the elements not perfectly on the grid. But I feel like no one ever uses that in like trap beats, and especially on the 808. But in these kind of beats it really helps to give the bounce and make it a bit more laid back and sloppy sounding. So keeping all of that in mind, this is the bass line that I came up with. So it only switches the note once right here. And I added a pitch automation to make it slide up just a little bit towards the end. Then we have this different kind of bounce that I talked about right here. Like I said, you don't have to do it through the entire pattern. And then I also put some of the notes a bit off grid. I usually like to keep the notes on the first beats perfectly quantized, just to make sure the bounce won't feel off when it comes in. But with all the other notes you can just play around a bit by pushing them off time a bit. I also added this little sound. This was like a random melodic one shot, but I pitched it down a lot and made it really short. And it just gives a bit of extra bounce to the bass line. So with that bass line we made a great foundation for our drum bounce. For the sound selection I'd say Ozzy keeps it pretty simple and classic with really clean and punchy sounds. What I think stands out a bit is that he really likes these wooden rim kind of sounds, either for snares or percussion elements. And for the kick drum it's also really trappy and punchy, but most of the time with a bit of an acoustic and gritty edge to it to make it sound a bit more old school and bouncy. So like the rest of the beat you want to keep the patterns pretty simple, but add some little interesting unique details to keep it from sounding too basic. So for the kick and snare I came up with this pattern. For the kick I imitated the bass line a bit and made sure to keep some of the notes off grid. Again, the notes on the first beat are perfectly quantized. I also added this reverse kick to kinda add the feeling of a record scratch without actually using a record scratch sound effect. The hi-hat pattern is very simple. OZ really loves his two-step hi-hats. The only thing I did is pushing the hi-hats a bit off grid as well by using this shift knob, which just makes the notes play a bit later. And I added this reversed hi-hat to give a bit of variation. Now that we have all the basic elements, we want to add a bit more bounce by using percussion layers. What I personally love to do is using percussion loops and using very short slices from these loops. They can really help to come up with more unique bounces, and I also really love the sound that they give, because most of the times they are already processed and just sound a bit cooler than the dry percussion sounds. So I sliced up 2 percussion loops. And then at the end of the pattern I made a little drum fill. Drum fills are great again to keep the simplicity and not fill up the pattern too much, but still give an interesting, unique moment to the bounce. So for the fill I added 3 layers, a rim shot, a hi-hat layer and a snare layer. And of course, to finish the beat I had to chop up a Memphis vocal. As you could tell, that beat was very inspired by the Hop Out the Van instrumental. So let's go for one more beat, but let's try not to exactly remake his style and rather just apply all the concepts we learned in the last beat. For this one I used this sample by my bro Angomate. He's a really dope, talented producer, he makes incredible samples, so make sure to check him out and show him some love. So for the main section of the beat, I just used this element of the sample. For the effects, I tried to make it a bit grittier with some Devil Lock and Mellowfy. Then I added some slices of the same layer, just pitched up an octave, and I processed that with some effect rack and pancake to make it a bit more interesting. And for the more high energy sections of the beat, I added this lead from the sample. For the drums, again I started off with the 808 with a very gritty, deep sounding one shot. Again I'm pretty much only staying on the root note, and for this one I actually played in the pattern with my MIDI keyboard. That way we have this natural sloppy bounce and some of the notes are very off grid. For some variation I also added this out of scale note, 1 semitone above the root note. That just comes in sometimes and gives some tension to the bass line. The kick and snare pattern is very simple. Again, the kick is mainly just giving a bit more punch to the bass line. The hi-hat pattern is literally just a 2-step pattern. I didn't change anything at all. For the percussion, this time we have these very clean, classic rim sounds. I made sure to use a few different ones to add a bit more depth and detail to the drum bounce. For these kind of beats you can have many different percussion layers, as long as you keep them as simple as possible. You can even have some layers with just one note in them, just to make sure there's still lots of space in the beat. To finish the drums we have 2 different open hats, one pretty classic one and one that sounds a bit more unique. And then I also added this record scratch. So I really hope this video could help you, and yo, I really appreciate you for watching till the end. And I think I have something that you're really gonna enjoy. I'm starting a new mailing list where I'm gonna send you a sample pack every single week. These packs will include full samples, sample starters, melodic accents, phrases, textures, drum loops, percussion loops, pretty much anything. So it's gonna be like a little surprise sample pack that I'll send you every Sunday. The subscription for that is only $5 a month, and every pack will include 10 sounds. So you'll be paying only $5 for 40 sounds. All of them, of course, made by me and completely royalty free. If you're interested in joining, you can check the first link in the description. When you subscribe, you will get a free preview pack and 1 week for free. So you'll basically have 2 packs to see if you think the subscription is worth it. And if not, you can just cancel it and keep your free sounds. So yeah, it would really mean a lot if you gave it a chance. And yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching.